It still boggles my mind that minimum wage is $7.25. At my job, we recently hired someone and they're starting out at $19 an hour. Which I'll give my job credit for raising the starting salary, cause a few years back I started at $17. And at face value I'm like, that's good money. But when you do the math, that's only $39K before taxes. $39K is nothing. The living wage for my city is $43K, which I feel is too low still. I know it's bad out here and I believe $15 should be minimum, but IDK seeing it laid out again was like WTF. Like they're trying to kill us at this point, cause that whole you need low paid workers thing doesn't even apply anymore, cause there aren't even paying the well-paid people enough. I honestly believe anyone paid under $15 an hour is going into debt just to live. But they want us to spend more money to help the economy and then call us stupid for being in debt. A lot of people have brought up raising minimum wage won't do anything, and I agree. I made this more so a realization that things are stacked against the worker. I still think minimum wage should be at least $15, but I understand that it's more complicated than just raising it. And people will say, well, no, jobs are still paying that, but I live in a state where the minimum wage is the same as federal, and I see postings all the time offering $7.27 $8. It's horrendous. I especially see these low wages for daycare jobs. You want the people keeping your child safe to be making pennies? It's insane. I hate this country. I just learned that the minimum wage in Texas was $7.25 hours. I was just speechless. The rich really are trying to keep the masses down. This may come across as ignorant. I don't know. But how in the hell do you guys in the US live? That wage is abysmal. I've seen posts of healthcare costs as well, and it just seems like unless you're loaded in the US, you're fucked. The minimum wage should be $35 an hour. Because that's what actually equivalent to the buying power of $7.25 back when that was set. There are some US cities where the cost of living is around $45.50K. That's the cost. Clapping hands medium skin tone, just clapping hands medium skin tone to clapping hands medium skin tone, live clapping hands medium skin tone. In some of these cities, the minimum wage is legally $7.25. Fearful face. It would take 3 full-time employees at that rate to survive for one person. Pleading face. Minimum wage, if we could pay you less, we would. America's gotten a $7 raise since 1938, let that sink in. My first job in high school paid $5.50 hours, and that was in 2003. Terrible that the current minimum wage is only 1.75 more than that 20 years later. Woman facepalming. Going into debt just to live. You're starting to catch on to the capitalist plan. In states where the minimum wage matches the federal, it's used as an excuse to keep wages universally low. For example, I'm in PA and our wages are horrendous. No matter what you do, you will be underpaid in this state. As employers can just look at the minimum and say, well, at least it's not minimum wage. It really does affect all of us. Minimum wage should be $35, $40 now. Look at the prices of everything. No one can convince me otherwise. There's absolutely no argument you can use against it. Gotta make sure the poors who live in areas where that's a living wage can't afford to leave. Don't forget, if they could get away with paying you less, they would. What country are you in where the minimum wage is that low? It's 3 times that value where I live. I am an MD and work as a professor in a private university. I make $4.50 per hour before taxes. Life is very expensive. Rent is ridiculous. If I had the chance, I wouldn't even doubt to go and work flipping burgers on the US I think we are all FC-ked everywhere. It's legal exploitation and every American should be outraged. It's sad cause I'm my area northeast, even $15 is paltry and doesn't do anything. When I started working it was like $5.15 an hour. I remember when they raised it to $7.25 thinking wow what a huge jump. Now it feels insane. $7.25 doesn't have any buying power. I brought that up with my capitalist boss during an argument and he didn't even acknowledge the point. Because he knows it's bullshit and he knows there's no defense. $7.25 takes you just above the poverty line at $15,000 a year. If you make less than $15,000 you are eligible for government assistance. It's set at that pay rate for a reason. When the poverty line goes up so will the minimum wage. Yeah. It's like basically we don't even have a minimum wage. Politicians don't even care enough to pretend anymore. Congress lets increase our own wage and benefits. Congress lets ignore the poor people. It shouldn't boggle anyone's mind minimum wage is so low. The reason wages are so low is because the powers that be need a slave class. It's by design. If they raised the federal minimum wage, the increased tax revenue might accidentally save Social Security. I do deliveries. Albeit a kind of niche variety. I was doing a delivery at an auto parts place the other day. One of the employees there said that they also are basically a delivery driver. And jokingly said maybe they could come work at my place. I said I think we're hiring. He kinda scoffed and said yeah. If they can beat $11 hour. As if that's a good wage. I told him I think our new hires came in at $19. But I'm at $25. He seemed shocked. Blows my mind. The minimum wage in Nebraska is currently $9. We currently have the smallest minimum wage call ratio in the country. And the only place I've heard of paying under $15 here in Lincoln is Dollar General. Who pays $11? Because of course they do. Hospital out here was gonna hire me for janitorial work. Found out it was 8.24 after they had raised it. Yeah. No. Here in Italy there is no law on minimum wage and it can go as low as €5 per hour. Honestly in my part of Canada minimum wage is like $15 here and still isn't even close to enough. I make $70,000 salary after 401k contributions, healthcare, taxes. My take-home is about $37,000. It's almost $16 an hour in California. Thank the GOP. They keep shooting down anything that will help the U.S. workers. Minimum wage needs to be $25 at this point. I would say 20, but that's barely enough to eat every day today. When do we do something? And what's even more fucked up? Democrats had the opportunity to raise it, but refused to do so. They oppose raising the minimum wage. Try to live in a third world country, lol. Might need to make some life-changing decisions. $7.25 is the federal minimum wage. Believe it or not, there are states that have not set a minimum wage and still utilize this amount. The federal government apparently doesn't care that most Americans in these can't afford to live on this amount. I am French and our minimum wage is higher and the value of our money is lower. So like we are at $9, which probably is like $12, and the price to live is lower and we have healthcare and it's still not easy for everyone. I really would like to talk to average Americans to understand. There shouldn't be a minimum wage. Go work in HVAC. It's actually $7.25.